Hi, I'm going to talk about science today because I have been sitting online reading random things and I have experts weighing in everywhere. And I have been called a Facebook expert, I have been called a Twitter expert. So, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to talk about science today. Plus, I am doing a disservice if I do not inform the world on things that I actually do know what I am talking about. I am not just a Facebook expert, despite the drunk debates with my boyfriend to the contrary. So, a couple months ago, almost 6 months ago, there was the Delta incident over the school in LA that they're filing lawsuit on, and they're still working on that lawsuit on. And that's kind of where I'm starting with that, because it's kind of important to start with the actual science of things. And my example is actually not going to be that specific plane. It's going to be another plane that had an incident about 4 or 5 months prior, because it has actual structural damage that's visible, and there are pictures of interiors of aircraft that I can cite as examples. Hi, Merle. Getting ready to bring up a screen on a plane that had damage when it landed in the Azores. It was a flight from New York, landed in the Azores, and it had a rough landing. It's fun things. Fun things. So people overreacted to it. There is a wrinkle that is highly visible on this, but I will explain why it's bad. So you have this wrinkle. You have some minor wrinkles up by the nose landing gear where the subframe of the struts actually mount into the aircraft on the major framework of the fuselage, or the tube, as we would call it in aviation maintenance land, along the roof line. That would be roughly center of the aircraft, where it landed on the way it landed. Essentially, it landed and it bounced between the nose landing gear and the main landing gear assemblies. And it's structurally a weak part of the aircraft. I would say that is either just before or just to the rear of the wings, because the wings would have some indicative damage vertical, not just horizontal on them, where it's across the top of the wings. You can tell the wings bounced in this photo, but if you go further, there's no photos of wing body fairing damage, which it's a really small picture. I wish I could find, here's a better picture. So in this picture, you've got the ribs of the aircraft, and aircraft are actually put together like ribs with a single keel beam, kind of similar to ships. So they have that roll and flex in them, and they have a subframe that goes. So the ribs of the aircraft go vertical, and then you have horizontal subframe that's actually meant to buckle and move with the aircraft. They're all riveted into place. You can actually replace independent sections of it by removing just independent ribs and popping the rivets. They look like this in the aircraft, where you can see where the actual frame buckled. But those subparts, they're mainly there just to rivet the actual framework that you see outside of the aircraft, the skin of the aircraft. You rivet them on. Oh dear God. Tim or Merle, God damn it, you and your freaking He-Man. So you have those on there. We have done, and you'd be surprised at how many planes do not have their original wings on them due to extended flights. They are a more commonly replaced component on aircraft than people want to believe. There is a varying flight timeline between replacements. Obviously, that is not public knowledge because it varies aircraft to aircraft and then what the aircraft companies use them for. So Airbus, they have different standards at being a French company and the French Safety Board versus the American Safety Board. Certain things on aircraft are replaced based on number of landings. Some are based on number of takeoffs. Some are based on number of what we call sorties, which is an overall flight, landing, the landing and takeoff, all encompassing. And then you have flight hours. Guten Tag, sehr gut, yeah. So dependent on what the component is and what the lifespan of it is, whether it be based in flight hours, landings, or a combination thereof, is when you would replace the wings or certain components of the wings, such as engines. Engines typically get replaced by the flight hour or if there was damage from a bird strike that was more internal than just the impeller blades on the very front of the engine. So we had that. You see this buckle down here. These are all from hard landings. Well, hard landings are caused typically by downdrafts or crosswinds, where it knocks the plane off center, so it'll land on a single landing gear assembly, or it lands on where it's leaning to a side where the nose only touches on one out of two wheels and whatnot. Planes have various systems built into where you have, when you have rough landings, you'll get flat tires. The blowout discs aren't on here. That's from an engine fire. There's actual safety rupture discs, though. And what I wanted to get into by showing what aircraft damage looks like from hard landings. Actually, Merle, it's really interesting. An easy way to tell an Airbus from a Boeing jet is Airbus flies by a joystick where they have a yoke that sits directly in front of the pilot. On a Boeing plane, the joystick is off to their left for the pilot and to the right for the co-pilot. In a Boeing plane, the nose landing gear steering is a small wheel to the left with the yoke in between, where it would be between their legs, and they have the rudder foot pedals. And then you have the 3/4 steering handle on the yoke. Whereas an Airbus looks like a video game simulation. Hi, Kiever Dam. So back in January, a Delta Flight 89 out of LA to, I want to say it was Beijing or Hong Kong. Shut up, CNN. Get the fuck out of my face with that. They dumped fuel. They dumped about 15,000 gallons. Well, they did that. Now, granted, they try to do it generally over the ocean or remote areas. Their flight path did not take them in that direction, and he made a last minute call. Granted, the pilot probably was fine. Delta was probably fine for this. Not a whole lot has come out because they're still in litigation for the civil lawsuits. So the NTSB and the FAA have not fully released the outcomes. I've been watching this case intensely out of curiosity on what actually happens with it, because pilots dump fuel all the time. They don't generally dump it over populated areas. You'll see them dump it in the desert. You'll see them dump it over the ocean. Nobody bats an eye because the flammable parts of the fuel are generally evaporated. The remaining component that lands is any byproduct of the petroleum and also the flame retardant that keeps fuel from igniting as easily. I am a hobbit. I am a hobbit, Okie. Hi. The whole flame retardant thing came after the Everglades crash for fuel. And that's what made the TWA flight 800 really interesting, which was ironically one of the systems I worked on. Specifically one of the systems I worked on, which was the air conditioning system that caused it. That would explain why we had a lot of systems in place. But for this, the pilot dumped fuel over a populated area, which tells me it was a last minute decision. We don't really read anything on it because he says, no, I don't need to dump fuel. But within 5 minutes, he started dumping fuel. He probably recalculated the aircraft weight and determined he was overweight severely, where when landing, because of where the landing gear mounts, especially on wide body aircraft, that puts a lot of stress on the center of the aircraft because the wings are going to be super, super heavy. To give you an idea of how heavy they were, roughly 1 gallon of fuel, jet fuel, is about 6 pounds. I'm just short, Okie. I follow the height requirement set forth in South Park by Kanye. And he does ask me, bitch, how you not the Hobbit again? When we're at home and I can't reach something, typically in the closet, and I need a stepladder. So pulled up Boeing 777. Boeing took down their Boeing did take down their technical specs page. For it, I've gone to Boeing's actual page for the 777, and I ended up having to get a Wikipedia. And it's a marketing page to buy the Boeing's 777 within the past, since this January incident, that's dropped from how much fuel they load on their planes to just that. Merle, I'm saying overweight. That's a fat bitch plane. I am past the first 10 minutes, so I'm good. The bitch is fat. She's got a fat ass. I did pull up the FAA technical chart PDF, and then, of course, the page has to reload, so we'll skip to this. So these are the different specs that used to be actually on the technical sheet. I wish I still had that PDF. I really do. It was on my phone on a web browser, and I guess I closed that tab. So on that specific Delta flight, they were flying a 200 ER. So its fuel capacity was 302,000 pounds of fuel, approximately 45,000 pounds of gallons of fuel. He dumped 15. So he didn't dump all that much in fuel. He dumped about one third of his fuel, and he probably burned off those 220 gallons just starting engines, because those are very, very large engines on there. That was one thing that GTA impressively got completely accurate. If you get pulled into a turbofan like that, you're going to come out as a mist on the other side because of the multiple turbine stages that are in that engine. So we always had a standoff. I was always paranoid about bringing up the aircraft. Those engines are not small, and even on 737s, they were not small engines, especially on like P8s I worked on. They had the larger extended range engines. We had 900 landing gear and a 800 fuselage. So it got really, really interesting to work on those engines. And actually, I have a Hobbit for scale for the engines. The plane I worked on, we could load up 70,000 pounds of fuel into an 8-hour burn. So there is that. I'm going to pull up something really quick. He would go insane because I have a clicky keyboard. I have no regrets about that. That's me. That is me on top of a P8 engine. We were actually finishing up installing the 450 and 490 over temp switches on the bleed air system. And you actually have to straddle those top panels of the engine because the switches are right in the just forward of where I was in the quick release panels. And those bleed air engines actually go to the AC system. I am a horrible person who watches air disasters before I go flying. Hi, Lindsay. Hello. I was just showing them this is my Hobbit ass for scale on a 737 engine on how large they are. So Hobbits is for scales. And then we work on I worked on the environmental systems. So the the AC system, well, I showed this actually to Sinatra the other day. I was showing him some different science things. So I showed him one of the images for the AC systems, and now I'm Ah, yes, here we go. Perfect. Oh, good. I found another thing. All right. So that's not a very large schematic. Nope. Um, hmm. Ah, yes. There we go. That's the one I want. Where are these? I know what I did wrong. I know what I did wrong. There's actually two terms you have to look up the AC under, and it's dumb. So, okay. So this is the AC pack bay. And what we worked on was the big box at the back is the plenum diffuser assembly and the heat exchangers. They work as an air-to-air cycle radiator, kind of like your car, but instead of liquid cooling, it brings across outside ambient air. So when you're at altitude, it's roughly negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit at that altitude, and it's cooling the AC pack bleed air that's coming off the engine at approximately 350 degrees. At 450, it shuts it off and starts bringing in cool air, and at 490, it goes into the emergency override systems that actually isolate all bleed air from the engine to prevent a fire from reaching the cabin. Those are pneumatically driven valves, and what it does is it cuts off the air supply to the pneumatic valves because the mercury inside the 490 temp probe melts and creates a single electrical current that sends the signal to shut off air to these systems. And this technology really has not changed a whole lot since the Cold War era, because P3s had similar shut-off systems. Yes, I do start. No, Lindsay, I'm not an engineer. I am an engineering tech, and I don't even work on planes anymore. I worked on planes for 8 years. I worked on P3s and P8s. No, I love fire. I like lighting things on fire. So I'm good with that. I'm definitely good with lighting things on fire. I really wish I could get these schematics to pull up better because the system's actually kind of complicated and a pain in the ass. Let's see. I'm looking for not the 500. I want the 800s. 7 max 7, 8, 9, 10 BBJ. Fire protection. That's one of the other systems I worked at. They don't have anything for it. Yes, here we go. Perfect. Found it. This works. Okay. So yeah, I can confirm it's actually going to be worse on Wednesday. Well, no, I don't construct planes even. I work in a totally different sector. And engineering techs that I can't come up with new plans. I can implement engineer plans. I can make minor changes. I have pushed back against engineers when pulling data and gone, hey, I'm going to change the way this runs. I work on a production line in a totally different industry now. But that's the difference. The engineers, they develop a lot of experiments and they write the final white papers on their thesis or the data pulls and reflect what everything's doing. Whereas I kind of implement their will, but we know it's experimental, or I take data and I make changes to go, oh, well, if I do this, it'll work. I just don't need an engineer to hold my hand for everything. I am not saying I had the power of God in my hands. I had the power of God to keep a plane on the ground if I didn't want it to fly. There's a difference. If I wanted to go drinking, I could have just downed the aircraft because I worked on oxygen. Thanks, Merle. Which war was it this time that you cited me starting? It was one time, Merle. Now it's every war. God damn it. You're not going to let this shit go. So this is the actual schematic for each side of the aircraft. So we have the 9th stage, which is bleed air right here. Oh God, I got to put it. You can't see my mouse. All right, we're going to change the screen. You're going to see just a few things. That one. Yes. Okay, so the 9th stage that is right here and has the modulating valve is where we get our engine bleed air from for when you're sitting in the plane and you feel that slight pop. It's actually less intense in passenger aircraft because they tend to pressurize the aircraft a little bit when they're on deck. so it's not as intense as you're climbing, because the plane is supposed to pressurize at 1,000 feet per minute. Well, between 1 to 2,000 feet per minute. Max is 4,000, or no, it's 1,000 feet per minute. The max is 4 for the pressure check on a 737 on the ground, based on anything below, I believe, 32 for barometric pressure. 32 inches of mercury for barometric pressure on the ground, which you'd only get in Florida during a hurricane. Lindsay, I have also sacked Rome. I have started the Crusades. And all of that. So you have the 5th stage and the 9th stage. The 5th stage does provide initial air, but the 9th stage is your main air source when in flight. So you'll go in there. It'll be the pre-cooler that takes it from 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and it just takes straight pneumatic air and puts it in front of it. Now, as you're cooling down this hot air, you will get inherent moisture in it, even if you're in a dry place like Arizona. It's going to pull any little bit of moisture. Yes. Yeah, I did that too. I also killed Caesar. That whole picture where it's a bunch of dudes, it was actually me. I just had like a short haircut at the time, so kind of looked like a dude, especially with those robes that they wore. Can't really tell you have boobs when you don't have any to begin with. She's a fucking tease. I started the Star Trek Wars too. Lindsay, I had to hide my Crusade armor. They can't know I actually found the Holy Grail. Yes, as was shown in that picture of me sitting on the engine. Because I am totally built like Jack's type, which is totally why I have an argument with Monk about women having asses, white women in particular. So, okay. Oh, and by the way, you have the ISO valve, which can actually cause bleed air to transfer systems, because you have left and right, which supply different sections of the aircraft. This mixing manifold actually has HEPA filters in it that get replaced every 4,000 flight hours. And they are in the Boeing maintenance manuals, a biohazard. You are to wear biohazard gear to remove them, because 2/3 of the air is recirculated through the mix manifold and goes through the HEPA filters. All of the air, it is not true that it recirculates all of the air. And 2/3 of the flight station air goes back into the mix manifold and ends up in the cabin. Yes, I prefer the term ladyboy. Yes. You want to watch a Call of Duty room clear real quick? You throw out the term ladyboy. Oh my god. I miss Black Ops 2, because that was like the height of people talking shit on the internet. I loved it. But we worked on different things like that. And one big problem is, so at the airports, you'll see a lot of planes and they have this yellow tube that hooks up underneath. Well, that's ground air conditioning. We have found that the Honeywell turbos that they use, the turbo compressors, they have an impeller blade that goes across, that blows air across the heat exchangers. That is external air that you'll see. So there's the, let me pause this really quick and pull up the right picture that I'm looking for. So on the plane, there are certain features you would see on the front and have no idea what they do. I'm going to show you those. I wish I could get my iPad to actually bring up and mirror my screen, or mirror its screen onto my computer, because I could just bring that up and show it to you guys with a capture card, and then all of it would make. I could just draw pictures on the other pictures and go, "Hey, it's right fucking here." That's not a good picture. It's a very bad picture, actually. Fuck it, I'll pull up P8. I can actually show the picture. I know what picture I'm looking for. And I know there's a P8 picture of like where you can actually see it on the plane, because they don't have fancy paint schemes. Actually, that's a perfect picture of it. Okay, so this is the bottom of a P8. It's the Australian variant. These are sonobuoy chutes on the back. The big thing to focus on is right here below the engine. That little slit right there, that is a duct to pull in air across the heat exchangers that are right here in the AC packs. And the heat exchangers will dump their air right here just in front of the nose landing gear. We used them to dry off on, well, shut up, Merle. God damn it. Yeah, you know what? The paint was too dark, because on the Boeing marketing plane, it's a dark blue, so you kind of can't see shadows when you paint the belly of the plane darker than the rest of the plane. So yeah, you know what? It was too dark. I said it. It was dark blue. I'm racist against the ocean now. We're Blue Man Group. I said it. But those little notches at the bottom of the plane. No, there was another. Oh my God. Here, you want to see what picture I was looking at? I'll actually show you. It was that one. That Okie native. No, I'm just a gay fish. I have hung out with Aquaman. I have swum with Aquaman. God. It's hard to see the ram air intake. Well, here's the same angle of the plane. Well, here's the same plane. So they've got all those notches there. But anyway, so ram air inlet, the heat exchanger exhaust right here, packs right here. The pack, the packs look like this. So this section right here is the heat exchanger. Now this is an older model because it actually uses a bag system. right here, there should be a what they call the mixed manifold, or not the mixed manifold, the water extractor. The water extractor in this area is a big block where it's actually it just spins up the air, and it it extracts the water from the air using centrifugal force, and then it dumps the water overboard. In older model aircraft such as the 200 series, 300 series, this Airbus looks similar to ours, but it uses this water extractor it's talking about is actually a bag system here and here. This is your primary inlet, this is an outlet, and it would be using something similar. This would be your turbo compressor system right here, and where this section hooks up to the plenum diffuser assembly, because there's going to be a diffuser that actually pushes heat towards the outside of the plenum, or pushes air along the plenum, and it comes through the diffuser, kind of like a hair dryer. There's actually a fan on it, and all of those are connected on a single drive shaft that has an air bearing assembly. Well, on the P8s, we found out that the Honeywell turbo system that's actually built here in Tempe, I did not know that, Merle. Thanks, Oki. But I have one fish friend. But my best friend's a fish. But on the Honeywell system, that single drive shaft, when you operate the AC system on ground over time, you would actually over torque the air bearing from what should be 20 inch-pounds of torque to 100, in the range of between 100 and 120 inch-pounds of torque. And we were actually twisting the heat exchangers on the aircraft, and it was actually pulling the bolts through the frame of the aircraft. I actually had an engineer come down and go, I don't know what's happening right now. I said, well, you have this hard mounted turbo right here. This whole assembly has a really, really short strut on it that's not supposed to move at all. And then the heat exchangers are supposed to flex a little bit with the aircraft, so they have free hanging struts on them, because the plenum assembly right here is a composite. What it was doing was displacing the energy across the largest area it could, so it was doing it over the heat exchanger plenum diffuser assemblies and ripping holes in the ripping bolts through the frame of the aircraft. So the Navy has had to actually reevaluate. Now they have to do torque inspections annually because of that finding. And I feel bad for the people who do my former job, because those heat exchangers are a pain in the ass to get out. We had a plane that had what they call dry bay fire protection discharge on it, and it's a mixture of silica and baking soda. Well, when it comes into contact with moisture, it becomes corrosive. Well, Florida air is full of moisture because it's a swamp. And they never sent it in to get fully cleaned. They wanted us to clean up as much as we could every time we were in the plane on a phase inspection, and then it would be fine. All the bonding wires were corroded within a year. All of them. So the grounding for panels in the event of for static discharge and everything, they were not so great and not so resistant. Yep, I have a problem with everything, everyone, and everything. I hate everyone. I'm a cat. God damn it. Thanks, Merle. Love you too. You're the best. Merle, no. Not today, Satan. Not today. So I was telling you guys about that HEPA filter that's in the system. Well, there are a couple other things that I got into arguments on, and somebody that was the most recent. I was a Facebook expert, quote unquote. That was a lot of fun for me to try to explain to somebody that dense. Filtration systems, they are generally certified under the ATSM standards. I brought up N95. That's an argument that I got in on. Yes, I do use Facebook. I usually use it to grab memes. But I had somebody freaking out about face masks on there, and I tried to explain it to them, and then everybody jumped in. They're like, "Oh, so you're more of an expert than the CDC?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, I work with filters more often than the CDC does, given the fact that they work on diseases, not filters. So yes, I would say that." Because ATSM or ASTM, oh my God. I'm having a really hard time with that today. Acronyms. Standardization of filters and protective equipment are generally done by engineers, not medical doctors and virologists, and not bioengineers. They don't count in this aspect, although they do get the bacteria they use to test these masks. So you're talking about NIOSH and FDA, surgical N95 respirator surgical masks are cleared by the FDA. NIOSH is approving N95 respirators. Well, N95 is a symbol for it filters out 95% of particles that are 0.3 microns or larger. A micron is 1/millionth of an inch. I don't understand what Chancer mechanics. I don't understand, Oki. What are you saying? I just saw your tweet. Thanks, Merle. I prefer the term rocket surgeon. Doctors really are one of the most useless people in the branches. They could send me out to somebody out in town. I'd probably get better care because I'd at least get a referral to a specialist, not, oh, here's some Motrin. Although at the end, when I got my root canal, I got the good shit. They were like, here's all the drugs. Go home and go to sleep. Because we couldn't get you numb to do the full root canal. I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I can eat now. Because I drank my food for a full weekend. That was fun. Well, I drank it and I ate soup. But yeah, that was fun. So N95s filter at 0.3 of microns. Surgical masks are rated at 0.6 and 0.8 microns. A piece of hair is 60 to 120 microns. As I said, 1/1,000,000th of an inch. So if a hair, and to give you an idea, the COVID virus, the actual specific virus, is 0.1 microns. So your hair is 60 to 120. They were telling people to use t-shirts as masks, like cut up fabrics and everything. Well, my hair can get caught in fabrics like t-shirt fabrics and stuff. So what the fuck is it filtering? And my biggest argument against wearing a mask in all of this is the mask. I get the mask protects everybody else. That logic, but it is more of a sanity plea. It is more of a sanity technique than anything else, because even if you are protecting everyone else from what you have, it is still on your clothes because you are not living in that mask 100% of the time. So you could have contracted it before wearing the mask. Well, now it's on your clothes and you're going out and you're touching everything because you're asymptomatic. Well, that person who's wearing the mask, or an N95 respirator, they're wearing this N95 respirator that doesn't even that's not even filtering out at 95% of 0.1 microns, because if it's filtering out 95% of 0.3, 0.1 can fit through the filtration system of it. And you can't put a HEPA filter on your face that easily. Like, not an actual HEPA filter like they would use in climate control systems. You would not get enough airflow through it. That's why you actually have certain AC systems are not compatible with HEPA filters, certain central AC systems. In certain older homes or older AC systems, they don't generate enough suction and they do not generate it properly to work with HEPA filters. You have a partial HEPA filter or you have a HOPA filter. There are different types. When you need mass airflow, you're going to use a HOPA versus HEPA. But you wear an N95 respirator. That's great until you get home and think about it. You have the security of your home now and you think you're secure. Most people are not stripping off their clothes in the driveway, sealing them in a hermetically sealed bag, and then throwing them in a high heat situation as a washer or dryer that would kill the virus, or wash it down the drain. You're not doing that. You're still taking the virus into your house. That is why most children, they don't have to sneeze on each other, but that's why schools typically tend to have a significant passing rate of the virus. Children don't obsessively wash everything. They tend to bring everything home, and homes, especially homes with more children where they're going to be around other children, tend to become ill more often because there are more children that can bring that virus home and they will spread it. Then the parents send them to school. These kids don't become symptomatic for 3 to 5 days. And then all of a sudden, every kid in the class has been exposed. That's why this panic over coronavirus and the shutdown of everything I think was the wrong direction to take. Obviously, you need to shelter your high risk individuals, your diabetics, your obese, your people that suffer from severe COPD, your severe asthmatics, the elderly. Yes, they do, that are immunocompromised individuals, such as those with AIDS, HIV, cancer, um, I believe Crohn's can actually be impacted by it too. I'm not 100% on Crohn's. Crohn's is a really weird disease. It's also it's rarer than everybody makes it out to be. But immunocompromised individuals needed to stay at home. Yes, I acknowledge that. But the mass herd needs to go out and get exposed to it. It's similar to when I was a kid, parents had chickenpox parties. I ended up catching chickenpox from going to an Easter event. I woke up and I was covered in chickenpox. That by then you're not passing it asymptomatically, you're passing it through the rupture of the blisters. My sister had to avoid me. It is better for me as a 5-year-old to get chickenpox than it is as an adult. Chickenpox is actually deadly in adults, and it's rarely more than an itch in children, itchy blisters. You have those symptoms, the scars will go away. I am 30 years old. I do not have any scars left from chickenpox. Any scars I have now are from me being a dumbass as a teenager or as an adult. Pick one. Because I've got some sick scars on my knees from being drunk and falling on reef in Japan. But I don't have the scars. My sister, on the other hand, her children had to be immunized because if she got exposed, it could kill her. My sister never had chickenpox as a kid, and she was an adult by the time I was a child that got it. My sister's 18 and a half years older than me because my parents are out of their damn minds. Yes, Lindsay, yes. No, I'm one knee, Okie, just one. I was drunk and I fell in slow motion. I can actually prove I was drunk because I was at the Command Over the Hump party. We were deployed. I was busy getting drunk and watching people do the walk of shame. And we were playing Cards Against Humanity, always in the smoking area. Except when we had the typhoon, they didn't let us stay outside, so we would go out to smoke, and then I would go to, then we would just beat each other on Mortal Kombat, and there would be like 15 of us gathered in like a quad, just playing Mortal Kombat on like 4 PlayStations, just passing the controllers around. I swear that's where my immunity from a lot of shit comes from, is just hanging out in a lot of small groups with people. But I also did not get the traveler sickness that a lot of people get, especially when you're in Southeast Asia and you eat something that you don't eat in the US, where you actually get sick, or you get sick from the water supply and you have all the gastrointestinal problems. That's actually called traveler sickness. Because it's a change in water treatment, and it is a change in food. You will actually get ill just from that. Yeah, everybody who saw me faceplant at the Command Over the Hump party and the doc that treated me right at the spot. Yeah. Plus, you can kind of tell it's a reef scar. Let's see here. Let me just share this on the screen. God, I gotta go back to 2015 when I hated my ex-husband. Worth it, no regrets. What the fuck? Computer. Yeah, we're doing this. Do, do, do. Let's see. Okay. Ah, yes, here we go. Don't screw with Reef. Because a month later, I sprained the other ankle in Australia walking to the plane. Just saying. It's nasty. Yep, that was Okinawa. I managed to injure every limb, and they cut my head open once while I was there because I had a spider bite behind my ear, actually. So I had to get my head cut open. And there was nothing to numb, so I felt it. Yeah, see? Okay, I lied. It's from the Crusades. Actually, you know what, Okie? I wasn't all that drunk. Like, I remember everything happening. I only had a couple beers. I mean, I acknowledge like I was under the influence, sure, but slipping on Reef, I could have been way more drunk. I could have been completely sober and I still would have slipped on this one reef that basically the tide was pushing out the sand. So when I stepped on it, I couldn't see it because the sand was barely covering it, but when the sand departed, it was algae underneath. The typhoon had blown in the sand because it was an area where we got a storm surge in, so it actually pushed the sand up in. Oh yeah, I've got all kinds of scars on me. I've been on crutches. Like I go big or go home. I was on crutches for my ankle being sprained. I'm taking a shower and leaning against the wall because I'm in so much pain. I can't stand on it. I sprained my wrist trying to ram a door open. I was sober for that one. The door in Diego Garcia, the latch actually rusted to my room and it jammed itself. Well, when I went to open it, I just rolled my wrist over. So I knew the door had been getting stuck because of the humidity. So I was like pushing it a little bit hard. Well, the latch actually jammed and I went to ram the door open and I rolled my wrist over. Instructions unclear, dick jammed in receiver. Oh my god, my officers were fucking idiots. Hold up, I think I have the picture still. I'll pull it up on screen if I do. Shit. Do I have it? I think I have it on. I actually think I have it saved online somewhere. It's kind of funny because it was an officer who wrote it up. Oh my god. Let's see. It would probably be in my mobile uploads because I was pretty much like, you're an idiot when I posted this up. Our officers were fucking idiots. We had a gender study major. Like, he was the smartest one out of them because he did gender studies solely just to go to flight school, because flight schools are typically very small. So, and he admitted, he's like, I didn't do enough extracurriculars and my school didn't have anything to do with like ROTC or anything. So getting into aviation school was kind of hard for him. So he just went and did gender studies and got accepted. So, yeah. Let's see. Oh, may puppy when he was little. He's at school right now with all his bitches. Oh, which should be right in this range. This is when I was going blonde too. So, yes, here we go. That work order is on a plane I worked on. And it says, co-pilot lower air conditioning vent releasing excessive moisture after ice blockage melting in lines. No, don't leave me, Oki. Yeah, when I got to the point of releasing excessive moisture after ice blockage melted, I went, well, no shit, it's water that was frozen that melted and became liquid again. Thanks for stating the I had to walk into maintenance control and go, what the fuck do you want me to answer for this? No shit. Thank you for telling me that water comes from ice. Oh, no. The main part I wanted to focus on was like this part right here. This was a work order on a plane, and I'm like, no shit. Oh, no, I'm not done with the lecture. We just got sidetracked because you wanted to ask how I was getting injured. When you put ice in your Jack and Coke and the ice melts and it tastes watered down and nasty because the water also became liquid. So, okay, so back to this. Okay, so all of this was caused. If you watch Air Disasters, they explain it essentially. So those the AC packs that I showed you with the heat exchangers, what they were doing was there's a central fuel tank in the aircraft that would be under the wing body fairing, and it extends up towards the front. So in this picture, actually, there is a fuel tank roughly in this area of the aircraft under the wing body fairings. And then this would be a cargo hold, and aft of the wings would also be a cargo hold. I've been all right, made in America. I'm not just a paint racist. I am a crayon racist too. The yellow ones really bother me. So do the chartreuse ones. Because I don't like the word chartreuse. It offends me. I expect the word chartreuse to be a banned word soon. I'm demanding it. What about my word rights? So in TWA Flight 800, those AC packs that I showed you, the plenum heat exchanger assemblies, they heated up essentially. And what there was no insulation. So the metal frame of the aircraft was actually heating up, and it was working as a heat source for the vapors that are generated in the fuel tank. So fuel systems after this actually had to change. Now we're getting more into the science part of it. When inerting a fuel tank in an aircraft, you want to get below 9% oxygen concentration. Oftentimes they will use nitrogen that is pumped out through the bleed air system because nitrogen is the highest concentration of inert gas that is found in a natural state environment where you would get air. Nitrogen is also used to purge oxygen systems because it does not carry extra contaminants very well, except for water. But you would use nitrogen in a fuel tank that is dry nitrogen off of a heated engine because it goes through a similar system, but it's called an OBIG system, onboard inert gas generating system. Older fuel systems on the P3s would use film to try to keep minimal fuel vapor stored in the fuel tank and to reduce the likelihood of a fire from things like the fuel pumps where they have electrical wiring connecting to them, because all you need is a spark at that point. You have enough air concentration in the system that the fuel vapors become volatile and reactive. Nothing made in America because I've never been pregnant. I'm good on that. I'll pass on kids. I am a female though, yes. I could blow Merle's mind. It's probably just hormonal changes. Actually, random fact for you, it's not monthly like women, but men actually get a hormonal fluctuation similar to what women get during their leading up to their periods. It's where testosterone climbs higher. So if you're in like a bad mood that day, it's usually that, and it lasts for like a day for dudes, and it comes once every like 3 to 6 months. It's just hormonal spikes in your system. Usually due to external factors like stress and stuff. But I joke about it being the man period because it is a spike in hormones, whereas with women, you have progesterone that spikes right around your period. And then during the ovulation period, it's estrogen, which is why our voices are generally higher pitched. We put off a different scent and everything. It makes us more attractive to men. Human biology, natural created pheromones. Women can have bad nausea that can actually dehydrate them. If they're puking or their stomachs are unsettled really, really bad, they can actually be hospitalized. As much as everybody hates talking about English royalty, Kate Middleton, her pregnancy on her small frame that she also has was probably really rough on her. And being as thin as she was, she does not retain water a lot, at least a lot of water. So her morning sickness could have actually done a lot of harm to her. So they hospitalized her out of precaution. It was just a very notable case of it. I would imagine it's the same for all women. Producing babies is producing babies. When you get into the semantics of it, it's women making babies is women making babies. We've been birthing babies the same way for thousands of years. That's why I kind of laugh at everybody freaking out about people wanting to do it at home. It's like, well, they did it up until really roughly the past 60, 70 years did it become commonplace to have a baby in a hospital. Most people up until the end of the Great Depression and the war economy had them at home. It was not common to have a baby in a hospital up until the late 1940s. So obviously, if you had complications, you were more likely to need a doctor. That's why midwives were often trained midwives were actually nurses who were trained in delivering babies and how to handle breech situations, things like that. Doulas are strictly natural delivery. That's it. There's a doula, which is strictly natural delivery. You have a midwife, which is somebody who generally holds a nursing degree, although state licensure requirements vary state to state. So that could be spelled out differently in your state versus another state, but nurse midwives are generally specialized nurses who can do everything a doctor can do except prescribe medication. Well, midwives are, you can choose to have a midwife usually through a hospital. Like you'll have an OBGYN who monitors the pregnancy as it goes on. But when it comes to delivery time, you can opt to have a midwife. And with some insurance policies, it's actually cheaper that way. And they are nurse midwives in most states based on their licensing requirements generally tend to be just as qualified with more hands-on experience at delivery versus overall encompassing the pregnancies. That's the big difference. They're strictly there mainly for delivery and immediate postpartum. So, but beyond that with pregnancies, I know nothing about it. I am not going to have kids. I'm good on having children. I like doing my job. I like being there. I have enough issues to worry about on my own. I don't know. So I'm going to go back to planes. But so Merle, this is the wing body fairing right here on the aircraft. Well, this is actually the wing. This structure that's sticking out is actually a chunk of the wing, but the wing body fairing is right there. And underneath, you'll notice the melted fuel compartments, or the melting around where the fuel compartments were, and the fact that there's heat scoring up here. That's because the fuel was actually fueling the fire. So a lot of the breakup was actually just related. A lot of the breakup with TWA Flight 800 was actually related more to impact speed versus the initial explosion. So there is that difference. A lot of planes, like I said, like I was describing, they have this onboard inert gas system. What it does is it pulls, you typically turn it on prior to flight, and then it runs at a maintenance. So you'll have the initial pressurize for it at deck level, at flight deck level, which is on the ground. You'll get the tanks to 9% or less than 9% oxygen concentration. The fuel tank's inert. There's not enough oxygen. Anything that sparks would be quickly squashed because you would consume all available oxygen in the area faster than it can replenish itself. So you typically want to do that. The other thing onboard inert gas does is it actually provides a back pressure for cross fuel transfer from the center storage tank to the wing usage tanks. So the fuel in the wings is most commonly used first, and then they transfer and they backfeed from the central tank. The central tank is where all aux fuel goes. Planes were typically designed with OBIGs after this incident. The Everglades incident proved that even fuel with flame retardants in the fuel were not effective enough to prevent outside thermal reaction. So you have these systems where you're working to make them inert, and then you, interestingly enough, have another system on the plane that can actually fuel a fire and make it significantly worse, which is your aviation breathing oxygen. On commercial aircraft, they have a couple cylinders. Their main goal with the masks is not to survive the crash. It is to get you under 10,000 feet of altitude. because at 10,000 feet, the air is very, very thin and it becomes very, very difficult to breathe and you suffer hypoxia. You are not ingesting enough oxygen as your body requires to function. Aircraft oxygen, per the DOT, so any Boeing aircraft has to use it. They typically require it of Airbuses that are operated primarily in the U.S., not temporarily visiting the U.S. They are required to be 99.95% pure oxygen. And then depending on the cylinder material and specific DOT licensing for this specific cylinder that they store the oxygen in, those bottles are taken out, completely drained, and tested for structural integrity and contamination every 3 to 5 years. So the oxygen you're using ideally in 3 to 5 years is not bad because it is filled from a filtered source. You're not going to have water in the system. If you get water in the system, you're going to smell it. It actually kind of smells like paint thinner or rotten eggs, depending on what the water is, whether it's hard or soft water, because of how the minerals mix. No, Merle, I'm not your mom. You're a smart ass. Wow. Wow, guy. I mean, I don't disagree that people don't fly. Machines fly, though. So in the TWA flight, even with the fuel tank, had they sealed it, because once the explosion happened, it went off under where the oxygen lines would be. There was going to be a fire for some time, because those cylinders, they're meant to provide enough air for about 15 minutes to get you under 10,000 feet in altitude. I should sleep soon so I can go to work tonight. But with that oxygen, it's at 99.95% purity. Hospital oxygen is at between 70 and 95%. They usually keep it at 95% because it's critical for patients to have, when they're typically using oxygen, it's for critical patient use. So they tend to keep pure oxygen there. So because your body is suffering from a shortage of it, the red blood cells are not carrying it. Your lungs are not functioning as efficiently. Variety of reasons as to why you would need a higher concentration of oxygen. And they do monitor it, because when you're on oxygen in a hospital, you're typically on it for a longer period than pilots are. So you can actually get what's called oxygen poisoning. So, and oxygen poisoning is actually just as bad as hypoxia. Hypoxia, you hallucinate and your motor function slows. You don't even realize you're dying. It sucks. You don't know you're dying. They train pilots to look for the signs of it. They train us. Like I was aviation life support systems primarily. So I worked on the pressurization bleed air systems like this, and anything that would put out fires, and oxygen systems. So they trained us on, like, air crew comes back with hypoxia symptoms. Here's what you're looking for. And you're going to be looking for an issue with the oxygen system. or the pressurization system. Oh, the AC pack's laying underneath the plane too. Huh. Part of the pack anyway, not all of it. But so you have that. I'll go over the symptoms of oxygen poisoning in a minute, but you should know that oxygen is highly reactive at the purity they would use in aircraft. Above 70%, oxygen becomes a reactive. Instead of just fueling a fire and allowing a fire to be sustained, it become, on at least our planet, I'm not talking about the sun or anything, on Earth, oxygen becomes reactive, where it can actually generate a chain reaction at 70% concentration, which is why mixing liquid oxygen with what they call hydrocarbons, aka fossil fuels, your petroleums, your aircraft, your jet fuels, things like that, oils, whatever is made out of it, even shoe polish. Shoe polish has petroleum in it, or petroleum byproducts in it. Those, when they mix with liquid oxygen, the chain reaction occurs, and the thermal output of this chain reaction is enough to actually ignite a fire. And if there's enough oxygen there to fuel it, it will actually become explosive. So those are things you want to look out for on there. No, we have to polish our boots in the military. Makes them taste better when we're licking them, since I'm apparently a bootlicker. Because I said earlier today that oppression is largely overblown by gender studies majors. And then they blocked me. Oh no, I'm mean on the internet. Oh no. Risk factors, scuba diving. Yes, because you can actually get an air bubble in your lungs. Yeah, they tried to tell me I didn't know I was oppressed either, basically. And I was like, that's very condescending to basically like, oh, you're oppressed, but let me tell you how much you're oppressed, because you don't know how we're oppressing you, little girl. Pats on head. And I'm like, bitch, I'm 31 years old. Air is not oxygen. Air is a combination of various gases. You have CO2, you have nitrogen, you have oxygen. There are various things that you have in your gas. 100% oxygen or 99.95% oxygen, 95% oxygen. That concentration is generally too high for long-term sustained use, especially when you're using it in a pressurized environment, such as an aircraft or a hyperbaric chamber that they would use to recover you and bring you back to standard sea level pressure. You forgot Trebek. But you can get it from extended use. Typically, divers use air. They do not use oxygen. The oxygen is what is retained in your blood, though, because the oxygen is what's carried by red blood cells. So there is a difference in what they do. Yes. Yes. Huff gas. It's not quite the same as cheesing, so you're not going to see a lot of boobies. You might pass out. Probably are going to pass out. You're going to pass out. And I'm talking about, God damn it, smartasses. And if you're going to do that, you just got to start huffing farts. If you're going to huff gas, just huff farts. I am a South Park girl. Yes. Blood of color. Merle, fun fact for you. When mixing paint, white is the absence of color. However, when doing it on the light scale or the light spectrum, white is the mixture of all colors. The UV spectrum. They stopped. Well, okay, I take that back. They didn't completely stop killing Kenny. They kind of do it like once every couple seasons now. We found out why they killed Kenny, though, every episode. It was because his parents were in a satanic cult, and Kenny is immortal. And he goes and fights Cthulhu, who kills Justin Bieber by squishing his head. That was pretty amazing. Merle, I'm not being blood racist. I just want to acknowledge that white is all of the colors on the UV spectrum. Yeah. So you have those. The blood system carries oxygen more so than other gases such as nitrogen and CO2. CO2 is carried by the body a small bit as waste. However, it is generally very, very little of it because your body prefers to keep CO2 outside of the circulatory system. Your body will pull out the oxygen and out of the air and leave the byproducts of nitrogen and CO2 in your lungs to expel back out into the environment. So you have those. That's why we have the OBIG system. The OBIG system uses a sieve bed and everything like that to filter out the nitrogen. It makes oxygen inert. It wasn't supposed to be 5 minutes. Shut the fuck up, Merle. Oh my God, we're going to fight so bad. Oh my God. I'm going to launch another crusade on your ass. Launching a crusade against Merle. So we have oxygen toxicity. We have aircraft that would fuel it with the highly purified oxygen. One thing that they bring up is a lot of people bring up is oxygen cures hangovers. Well, it doesn't cure hangovers. That's actually not true. It's not a cure for hangovers. It stabilizes the effects, and it essentially is kind of poisoning your brain when you huff it on aircraft and you forget about the headache. There's a difference. If you are not drunk, it actually causes, at least on me, I have astigmatism, so my vision may be affected slightly different. My astigmatism isn't bad. I generally use glasses when I'm using a small computer monitor, but that's about it. Oh my God. I do need a nap. Ugh, that's horrible. Ugh. But you typically, shit, I lost my train of thought because I'm freaking reading what Merle's saying. Um, sorry, I have astigmatism. So for me, my vision gets sharper as I'm doing it. So when you turn up the sharpness on a photo, you see the outlines a little bit better and the outlines become more and more vivid. I tend to get a little bit more sharpness. Dude, I want some cyborg implants. I want that superhuman strength. I just want to be able to see my boyfriend naked, like all the time. It's like I can see through your clothes, but then like turn it off around everybody else and just be like, "No, I'm good. Pass." But yeah, that's about it. You have different systems on planes. TWA Flight 800 broke up mostly on impact. The explosion certainly weakened the structure, so it was a lot easier for the panels to peel off when it happened. But it was it was when it broke off. Yeah, impact crashes are always the worst. So, I mean, that's all I can think of right now. I was talking about the different filtration systems. You have your filtration systems that break down X amount, which is why they use HEPA filters on aircraft. AC systems, because 2/3 of the air are recycled. The fuel has a flame retardant in it. They use nitrogen to reduce the fuel vapor. From reduce the likelihood of fuel vapor from igniting, and oxygen toxicity, what oxygen they use on aircraft, structural damage, why pilots would dump fuel to avoid a hard landing, and yeah, aircraft ribs, you can rivet on new panels, you can rivet on new horizontal framework, not the vertical. The vertical is the main structure, and then the substructure is horizontal. Wing body fairings take the brunt of it because, well, just fore and aft of the wing body fairings take the brunt of it because that's the softest point at the wing body fairing. That's structurally the weakest point. It's where it's the smallest point where two major components would meet to where two larger body components would meet together. So that small point's going to buckle before the rest of it does. Shit like that. I like turtles. I'm reading your comments and I'm just like, okay. The Aussies are so cool. Oh, Avalon Air Show. I've been there. C-17, P-8A. Australia brought theirs. Seahawk or Sikorsky. Yeah, Seahawk. F-18. South Vietnamese Air Force markings. Oh, I drummed in front of this. I actually played drums in front of it. I think it is on my Twitter. I think I actually put it somewhere. Let's see. Ah, yes. Yes. Here we go. That bees me. Well, yeah, I was talking about the science of planes. I got sidetracked, and then I just kind of was like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to talk about any more science shit." Yeah, that's me in front of Japanese self defense force, and the Japanese self defense force is here, and they were like, "All right, guys, come over and hang out with us." I was like, "Sweet." F-35. So Australia does buy onto a lot of our planes when we first put them in R&D. They give no fucks. This carrier is called a ski slope carrier. Go away. Fleet of Arctic icebreakers. The ones we're still using were the ones we still use are actually wooden hulls. I like Japan. We already nuked them twice. Well, let's see what's happening in my old P8 land. Actually, I wish I could find that. Actually, that's what I'm gonna do. Let's see if I can find that picture again, because I can actually point out. There's a picture that exists. I can point out all the planes I worked on that. I worked on that plane. I worked on that plane. I definitely worked on that plane. That's a paint scheme. There's another one. I did not work on that one. That's a VX1 plane right there. That's out of Philadelphia because of the Liberty Bell. .286. I didn't work on .286. That's in long-term pres. That's in long-term. That's a P3B. That's got a new candle in it. But yeah, this plane specifically, we got it back from the depot. Oh, that's my baby girl. Oh, 764. Oh, it's my baby girl. She followed me around the world once. So for the year we were bringing out the P8s, this plane right here, I actually worked on that one a lot because it was a throwback plane. I also worked on 521 that is right there, 762. 929 I worked on. 925 I worked on. And I'd be willing to bet that that's 334 at the end right there. But yeah, this is a throwback. No. It's the desert. We don't get rain here. And yes, I know what you're talking about. I just missed my planes. They were pretty. It was pretty badass to work on a Cold War era aircraft. Planes that had been around since long before my parents had even met each other. I flew on a plane from 1973. That came into service in 1973. That was my squadron. That was not us. That was the squadron after us. Well, actually, that was this year, so that definitely would not have been us. VP16. That's VX1. I think that's T3 right there. That's the test plane. This plane, this specific plane, 761, is a piece of shit. Hi. This, yes, I know you have the P8 eyes. We were actually informed of everybody who had bought on when we were training for the initial plane. Which one are you? I can't see which one you are. 955, not mine. 432, not mine. 754, nope. That's actually VP. That's the Mad Foxes. That's VP5. Test plane. It's bad because I can point out all of the places. And I meant throwback because that oh, I was just discussing the science of the Boeing's planes and like why they dump fuel and all that stuff. P8A lasered near Guam, going ham in Guam. That's the UK version. .007. Oh. Merle, if you're here, yes, .007 is a secret squirrel plane. You can look at different pictures and you'll see it. It depends on the model. Merle, this plane .007 that I have pulled up on the screen, this one right here, yes, .007 is a double use. .007 is not just the plane's identifier number on the side of it. .007 definitely refers to James Bond. Behold, it's secretive radar pod that everybody knows about. .007. This plane is James Bond. So, yeah, that's freaking awesome. I need to get this picture without the arrow because, oh my god, I want that picture so bad as a background. Oh, right there. Ah! Oh, he's got his lights on. He's got his underbodies on now. Oh, so it's a dual purpose radar. Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, this was actually the squadron I was at. They did the first. This is for the. This photo is actually the first aerial refuel. um, over the Korean Peninsula. It was awesome. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end this here because I covered the fuselage, the aircraft fuselage distortion, and why pilots would dump fuel, and then what dumping fuel means, and what would happen if those tanks were full, if they crashed, things that could be contributors in a crash that would become more hazardous, and then how that affects like how some of those extras would affect passengers and everything like that. Just the science of it. So yeah, it's fun things. No, you're not. I am I've run out of things to talk about right now. This was kind of a spur of the moment, just like, well, I'm already awake. So I'm just gonna bullshit for a while and while my laundry's going. And my laundry's gonna be long done. I hope she is, dude. Have a good one. God damn it, Merle. Merle says I started wars. I'm gonna end this before I start another war on Merle. Well, I mean, obviously, that's. I would hope that you're worried about the baby. So, go check on the woman and the little one. Oh, it's just Merle. Just Merle. Like, just him. So, all right, I'm out this bitch.